Unlock the full potential with your business with Leadershipity. Our proven strategies have fueled growth for countless organizations. Ready to elevate your leadership and scale your success? Book your free 15-minute consultation now. Click the link in the show notes below and let's make your business soar.
There are a ton of life skills that will serve them far beyond the 4 to 6 or 3 to 6 years that they're going to be in school. Learning how to represent yourself as a brand, learning how to represent yourself as a professional, understanding kind of the puts and takes of taxes and financial, decision-making and consequences and all of the things that kind of come with really managing NIL as it was intended to kind of be, I think are, some of the most valuable life skills that you'll receive. And many of them aren't taught in the classrooms, which I think in some ways even continues to give athletes new and additional opportunities to set themselves apart from their peers because they're going to be doing things professionally now that many of their classmates aren't doing. So yeah, I see it as a tremendous learning and education opportunity for any athlete that's kind of stepping into this space and looking at it through the eyes of how I think we like to say NIL was intended, but representing yourself in a brand for a monetization benefit, it's something that I think is really valuable.
Welcome to NIL4U. I'm Rob Finkelstein. I am the founder and CEO of Alumni Direct, where we've created a platform to help alumni network and connect in one centralized location. And we're so excited about this show. Every week we go and talk about NIL for good, and we talk about different types of stories out there. And the big one I always like is our Trent's Tips. And we're real excited today with our special guest, Thomas, who's going to be talking all about some different forms of education related to NIL. So Trent, how you doing today?
I am awesome, Rob Finkelstein. Thank you from Alumni Direct to Trent Clark, CEO of Leadershipity and Athletic Influencer Marketing. It's so excited to be here. And we got the special guest of Thomas Jr., who partners with AIM, who I love, and BasePath. Thomas, how you doing, buddy?
Excellent. Thanks for having me, guys. Excited to be here.
Man, I'm excited you are here, brother. So I always love to talk BasePath because you've got such a unique space in the NIL space. So first, Thomas, before we get rolling, tell them where they can find you.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, you can find us on pretty much any social platform that's out there. If you look for BasePath NIL, and basepath.com is, where we live and exist. If you want to look at what we're doing and how we're trying to help in the space.
Love it. So I'm going to kick us off here, Rob. First question, because BasePath, tell us a little bit about exactly how you serve the community, because you come at a number of different angles. You kind of have a lead in with the collectives, as I understand it, but yet you serve all of the collective, a vendor, and really the student athlete with one app in different forms and capacity. So walk us through that real quick.
Yeah, no, of course. And again, appreciate you guys letting me share a little bit about it. So our primary focus has been on serving collectives. And I would say even more broadly, operators within this space. Kind of when we came into NIL, we noticed that there was, a lot of folks that were out there trying to help bring solutions to bring what I would call activation into the space, marketplaces, exchanges, and things like that. There were very few folks that were really kind of focused on trying to help make it a lot easier for the folks that were really going out there and driving a lot of these deals and kind of bringing new opportunities to athletes. And so that's kind of where we fit in. We provide software that helps to kind of ease the operational burden for these administrators and operators of the collectives themselves. We have dashboards that they kind of, live within, providing deals, contracts, task management, payment facilitation, tax and compliance documentation, and then an app for the athletes that helps them to see, what they need to do, when they need to do it, what they're going to make, how it all kind of comes together. And then, for the app on the athlete side, we've actually just recently kind of expanded it to help them to get a much broader view of what's going on within their financial lives beyond just the NIL deals that are coming through BasePath, but any NIL deal that they're receiving from any platform that's out there. And we know just from our research, and we work with thousands of athletes, that they're typically on anywhere from 4 to 7 different platforms at any given time. So a way to help them kind of consolidate their NIL lives in one place is really what we're trying to do, and just help them to navigate this ever-changing and complex space, as you guys know.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it that for all you student athletes, special gift to you today. As you see at the bottom of the screen, Thomas Jr. offering today the free NIL wallet. If you're out there navigating, hey, how do I do this thing? They've got a fabulous app in BasePath. You simply email Thomas at basepath.com, subject line, NIL wallet. He will kick you a link that you can get a free NIL wallet on the BasePath app. It is a fabulous tool. We use it in the AIM education program. You're going to love it. And it's going to really help balance things for you. It gives you clear visibility on where opportunities are coming from, how to manage it, the revenue that's coming in. And of course, there's continuing education always out there through AIM, through BasePath, to start talking about, wow, hey, I made some money. I'm going to have to pay taxes. All these things that are going to go on off that, and you're going to learn a ton. Rob, what quick question do you have for Thomas before we run into some headlines? Because I want Thomas to do some headlines with us today.
It's interesting, this whole NIL space, and obviously we talk about it on each show. Maybe just take us through the quick genesis of how it started, with you.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think it largely came about from what I was saying. Like when we came into the space, we were actually a little bit late. We probably started at the end of 2021, so probably 6 months after the gavel dropped on this whole, industry. And at the time when we were kind of looking at what the industry really needed, we were thinking we were going to create a marketplace and a place where athletes can find brands and so on and such. And that market was largely saturated. I mean, there are, I'm not kidding you, dozens of different products and services and softwares out there that help to do that. And, instead of being just another one of those, we wanted to really kind of help add some incremental value to this space. And we came to understand one of our, investors is a guy who works closely with some big NIL providers. And we came to kind of recognize that their lives were not all that simple, managing hundreds of athletes and thousands of transactions and, upwards of millions of dollars in payments. It's a big order. And a lot of folks that are in the space are largely doing this as a passion project. I think you're starting to see the professionalization of it kind of come with time, but these folks were just like building out spreadsheets and kind of managing it themselves. And we felt like we could offer them some tools to make their life a whole lot easier. And so that was really it. We found a spot in the market that we thought needed some real attention and just dove in. And we were very fortunate in that, shortly after that, these things called collectives started popping up, and they were doing exactly the same thing that, we were helping some of these other folks with, which was, hey, we're going to help to create, sports marketing agency, a collective, whatever you want to call it. We're managing hundreds of athletes, thousands of deals and tasks, millions of dollars in payments. We need some help to do that. And now we want to start raising money through members and donors and fans and subscribers, and kind of coming in on that side of the house too. So, yeah,
that's great. I mean, it's almost, I guess, kind of like a HubSpot, right? Something, just specifically geared towards NIL. So we're going to get into a lot more questions with Thomas in a little bit here, but we want to start out covering NIL for good. And we always talk about that on each episode. And there's an interesting article here that Trent's going to bring up related to Shake Shack and Altius teaming up on a new NIL campaign.
Yeah, I love this. Shake Shack, is this it's coming through?
Yeah, we got it. Yeah, I mean, I think the key thing here is what they're doing is they're starting. It's called the program is called Stand for Something Good Athlete of the Month, and they're highlighting 10 different universities: Colorado, LSU, Marquette, North Carolina, Ohio State, Penn, Stanford, Texas, Washington, and Wisconsin. And each month they're going to highlight a specific athlete in that. And they got some pretty cool things, to the athletes, giving them some different Shake Shack type things, which I'm sure these athletes definitely love. So, Trent, any thoughts on this one?
Well, I think it kind of comes back off of our, we saw last week, our last episode, we talked about Indiana University and their commitment to all these athletes who have actually leaned in on a charity of choice kind of thing. And so we see this now with the NIL for Good world, right? About how well they're doing this. And I think it's one of those things, Thomas, and I'd love you to talk about it, is, everyone's kind of got this down view of, oh, NIL, it's a money grab for kids and blah, blah, blah. And you and I both know, we've talked a lot about this. I am an entrepreneur at heart, and I love the skill sets that these kids are learning through this operation of being an NIL educated person, from sales to marketing to customer service to document management, which you guys help people do. What's your view of NIL for good and the many lessons that these kids are getting?
Yeah, I think you hit it right on the head. I mean, there are a ton of life skills that will serve them far beyond the 4 to 6 or 3 to 6 years that they're going to be in school. Learning how to represent yourself as a brand, learning how to represent yourself as a professional, understanding kind of the puts and takes of taxes and financial, decision making and consequences and all of the things that kind of come with really managing NIL as it was intended to kind of be, I think are, some of the most valuable life skills that you'll receive. And many of them aren't taught in the classrooms, which I think in some ways even continues to give athletes new and additional opportunities to set themselves apart from their peers, because they're going to be doing things professionally now that many of their classmates aren't doing. So yeah, I see it as a tremendous learning and education opportunity for any athlete that's kind of stepping into this space and looking at it through the eyes of how I think we like to say NIL was intended, but representing yourself in a brand for a monetization benefit, it's something that I think is really valuable.
Yeah, I'd like to pivot real quick before we go into some other articles about Alumni Direct, because once these kids actually are getting out of school, they become alumni. They got to go out into that workforce and talk about being an athlete, and where's your perfect first network is the university you just came out of. So Rob, talk to us a little bit about Alumni Direct. I know you guys are offering a 30-day free trial right now available on your website, which is, for any kid coming out of school and looking for opportunity in a tough market, this is great.
Yeah, I think it's important to tap into alumni. Alumni want to help. And my experience in the past, I was a president of my alumni club for University of Delaware in South Florida. And when I meet a fellow alumni, it's like, what can I do to help? They're pretty cool because they went to the same university, probably grew up in the same area. But it's important to utilize those resources. And even from an athlete perspective, I think a lot of times alumni athletes kind of get forgotten. And so what we've done is we've created Athletes Corner in our college community centers to give them a place where they can highlight their brand, whether it's current athletes under NIL or whether it's alumni athletes, but giving that space where alumni will at least look and focus on their product and service. But I definitely encourage people to utilize it when you're networking, connecting. A big part of people that want to help is your alumni group.
Thomas, tell us a little bit about your alumni experience. I mean, you're a college grad. Where did you go? And just tell us a decent story about some of the interactives you did.
Well, I'll also tell you too, just as far as NIL is concerned, the networking aspect of that is tremendous. So many people, particularly in the world of NIL, are trying to give back to the schools that they love and to the athletes of those schools that they love. And so there's a huge opportunity for athletes to kind of connect into that network in a meaningful way that they've probably not had prior to kind of this changeover. Yeah, for myself, I went to Grand Valley State University, right down the road. I'm sitting in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And then I got my MBA from the University of Notre Dame. In both cases, I had great alumni networks. My jobs were from folks that I knew at school and were able to kind of get me into places that I wanted to go. And I have a tremendous amount of love for both places and the people that I met, both in school and then kind of branching out into the alumni networks that exist within them.
Awesome. Rob, take us through this next article, which I think is near and dear to my heart.
Yeah, NIL, the transfer portal, just talking about the whole mental health aspects of it. And it's interesting. I've talked about this on some of my other podcasts as well, is that just the influence of social media. And so obviously social media is a big part of NIL playing into that. And there's a lot of stress that are put on athletes. I mean, they're going through this whole process, everything they've got in general, that they face hurdles with sports and mixing that with school and everything else. And now NIL just brings another twist to that. And there's both positives and negatives. And so they're talking about how athletes can, utilize help. And it's the importance of mental health is just critical.
Yeah, I think this is really a tough one because I know, there's a real challenge in this environment. One is the fact that, first of all, a lot of people don't know it's only like 30 to 35% of people get in the portal, that go into the portal, come out to another team and another organization, another college. So this isn't a guaranteed success. And then it's a stressful environment anyway. They're leaving a school that they thought, hey, this is going to be great. Someone asked me to come here and it's going to be fabulous for me, right? And then it's not. And that's okay, but it sucks at the time. And so when you see that, I think that it's a really kind of stressful environment. And then let's throw some kerosene on that fire. And when people start using words like, oh, this is tampering, they coerced Trent to go into the portal so they could get him over at the University of blah, blah. And it's like, come on, man. Like, it's so exhausting that I can't imagine what coaches, kids, parents are all just trying to go through in this. Because at the end of the day, for me, the alignment is that the kid wants to play at a school where he feels valued and the coach believes in him in a better environment. Or it may simply be, I want to study computer science and work for a brilliant guy like Thomas one day, where we're the back end support for all these NIL and these universities. And my current university doesn't offer that. I may love my team, but I can go play basketball down the street or another state and get the degree I really want. So, all of us have different motives and different reasons for why we're utilizing the tools that are there. I think there's a lot of judgment around, and I find the judgment exhausting. But Thomas, I would love to have your input on this because, it's a challenging environment.
Sure. Yeah, of course. I think the transfer portal just generally is pretty crazy on its own. When you layer in the fact that fans now are able to kind of provide their opinions and thoughts in real time of what they think about kids, largely. I mean, we're talking about teenagers to early 20-something, kids to young adults. It's tough. And I mean, even beyond the transfer portal, you miss a pass, you have an error, your ball goes through your legs. I mean, you're hearing about it from in 14 different ways in real time, like when you step off of that field of play. And I know that for these athletes, they're just trying to do what they love and, chase their passions for playing the game that they really care about and are really talented at. The transfer portal has with it its own complexities. I think, Trent, the point that you made is one that is really important, I think, for a lot of these, young men and women to understand, which is, going into the transfer portal is one thing. You may not come out the other side, and you may end up, burning the bridge back to be able to play a sport for the next couple of years, because you may be getting advice from whether it's an agent or a parent or a guardian or uncle or aunt or whomever telling you that there's a big pot of gold waiting for you on the other side of this thing. I mean, I think we're starting to see kind of the immaturity of college sports that a lot of professional sports have kind of largely come to understand, which is, listen, there's an attrition factor to athletes. There's a drop off and kids will get kind of spit up and shoot out. Like, that is also true in college athletics. You don't just all of a sudden find yourself on the other side of transfer portal and are guaranteed a great deal or a great school or a great opportunity, whether it's for playing time or for an NIL opportunity or whatever. The stars don't always align. So I think having more education and allowing these athletes to go in with more eyes wide open, I think is something that also helps. And to me, you're getting a lot more folks that are kind of trying to move them in a direction that, I think they're trying to, optimize their value, but in many ways maybe destroying it at that expense. So it's, certainly something that is crazier than ever, because an NIL, in many ways does exacerbate it, because now you're thinking, hey, I'm going to go to a different opportunity to play more plus make more. It does change the balance a little bit as someone is making a decision in that respect, but it also leaves a lot of young men and women out in the cold.
What happens if you don't get taken? So are you now out of your other school? I guess you kind of, like you said, you burn your bridge with your
no.
School.
So you can come back, and some folks will take you back. But we know other. I've heard of secondhand examples where, hey, you go to the transfer portal and that's it. like, good luck. And you're on your own. Like, go find something better. Others that are just saying, like, okay, great, come on back. Like, great that you took a shot. If it didn't work, like, we still love you here.
Is there a time period for the transfer portal, or?
Yeah, it's a set time. I want to say, I don't know the exact dates, but it's, when it's going on, it's crazy. Like, it's going on.
I believe it opens on Monday, December 4th. And you're seeing these trickles right now of athletes that have entered the portal, right? So the showcase is open, but it won't be official until the 4th, where you could actually contact someone. So we have, of course, the Big Ten Championship, the SEC Championship. Everything is this Saturday, right? There's a bunch of big games. And, of course, the college playoffs in Division II are going on. Your Grand Valley team is in the quarterfinals this weekend. Go Lakers. And a little shout out to the Lakers. So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a big challenge. But, for that Division II, Division III, December, January, early February are heavy. This is heavy recruiting time because you're trying to compete against the Power Five and the Division I's of the world. That's not coming when it's go time, because all those kids are out front. This is their kind of go time, and this transfer portal opens up. And so it creates new opportunity. To me, it's one of those things that goes back to, hey, good and bad. There's opportunity in both, right? So it's bad for someone maybe, but there's opportunity for someone else, right? It's good for another. So there are challenges in it, but I think we got to leave our judgments at the sideline. And everyone, I think, Thomas, you hit on it. Like, everyone's got thumbs and gets on and going, this kid is disloyal because of this and that. Like, you don't know.
Now, is the transfer portal specific at different times of year per sport, or just this is open for all sports at this time?
I do not know the answer.
I don't know.
I mean, obviously, like right now we're just talking about football, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I think it is different for different sports.
I don't think the transfer is opening for basketball on December 4th.
Okay, gotcha. That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into our next one. Hey, thank you for the shout out on little education. They're so important. I appreciate you emphasizing that, Thomas Jr., because at Aim for NIL Academy, we are always talking about education. Check the bottom. Go to aimfornil.podia.com. 25% off the NIL Academy. Use code NIL4U on this podcast. We'd love to have you there. Always trying to educate. We are very focused on the parents, the high school athletes. As we see, Michigan's now in legislation, headed to Senate to get their approval for the state. So we'll see how long that takes, but it's in the process, right? So, and now I believe there's 33 states at the high school level that are allowing NIL education. And even if your state is not allowing that, as a future collegiate athlete, you want to get that education now, because having tools like your NIL wallet that's being offered to you today for free, and having those things in place so that when you get there, man, you're going to hit the ground running and really create more value, as opposed to getting to campus and learning the dorm, the school schedules, what the coach expects of you, the training table, the practice, the workouts. Everything's new in a new schedule. Why would you want to add NIL at that point when you could get that all in advance of with guys like Trent and Thomas and other people out there in the network that will provide that for you? So please lean into that. And with that, let's jump into last two headlines here before we go to Thomas's tips here. Don't want to get some Thomas education tips for the day.
Yeah, we Trent's tips or Thomas's tips today.
We're going Thomas. Yeah, I'm transferring to Thomas's tips today. And I'm leading with this, hey, let's do a revenue sharing model for all the athletes, which of course I find, Rob, that this is in theory a really cool idea, right? That, we just revenue share because we know the TV contracts are massive and all these things. But wow, I mean, the complexity of the value of the athlete, who's on TV and who's not, and all these things, we can say anything we want out to the media and the press, but taking something from a concept to an execution, an entrepreneur like you, Thomas, can really speak to this. Like, hey, there's a bunch of concepts in the NIL world, but taking that to an execution are two very different things. But Rob, what's your feeling on this first?
It's interesting. I think it's almost like, think about the major sports leagues, they're doing, different shares. And I think, some of these small market teams, it gets very controversial. I mean, think about all these small market teams and, they're not spending the money and they're tanking and doing different things. I mean, I think it opens up Pandora's box a little bit, because you're right. I think now you're going to talk about all these big schools and they're saying, hey, well, we're making all this big money. Why should we share it with smaller schools? And then there's also a thing in there about Title IX, which we talked about on, I think it was last week or the week before show, just of, being fair to, are the female athletes, their teams getting paid as much as the male teams? I think there's a lot to it, and it could open up a lot of controversial things.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you, Thomas, when I think about this $1.4 billion in annual revenue just by the expanded college football playoff, man, there's a lot of money out there, man. I mean, it's just getting bazonkers, right? So what is your view on this thing?
Yeah, I think it's largely an inevitability. I think how it actually kind of shakes out is going to be, really where the devil lies. Like it's in the details here. Yeah, Title IX is, I think, the most popular kind of like, well, we don't know how to figure it out with Title IX. I don't know. It's an interesting one to me. Like in many ways, state institutions are already kind of showing a disparity within, I think, men's and women's sports. If you just look at coaches' salaries, like men's basketball coaches make, I don't know the exact numbers, but it's anywhere from 3 to 4x what women's basketball coaches make. Like, why is that not a Title IX issue if it's going to be the same for, men's and women's basketball players, if they're all kind of considered employees? I think really kind of where it gets a bit messier is when they are employees. And if you do have to go down kind of the employment track, because I mean, we work with some institutions, or, very closely with some institutions that are state schools. If you want to be an employee of a state school, you have to have a 20-day open request for proposal. Like, you have to keep, like, do you want to tell me that, like, the starting quarterback is going to have to put himself in a pool with 20 other folks and, hey, everyone's applying to be the starting QB for school XYZ? Like,
yeah.
No, it's going to have to, you're going to have some state laws probably change in order for this stuff to work in the way that it would need to. And I do think, the Title IX question is an important one. It's something that I think will be, addressed by people much smarter than myself, certainly. But I think you also have to run down the, the rabbit hole of like, okay, if you are going to take away, for better or worse, athletic departments in college athletics have built themselves under the assumption that they maintain the revenue, and they've built their cost structures accordingly. So that cost structure includes things like, staff and coaches' salaries. It also includes things like scholarships and room and board and meals and a whole bunch of like state-of-the-art training facilities and things like that. If that money now needs to be distributed out to athletes, it's not as if like this is a zero-sum game. Like, there are dollars or they're not dollars. And it's not as if like the schools can snap their fingers and say like, okay, hey, we'll just like pass along every dollar from one bucket to the other, and we'll still keep it over there. You are going to have to make, difficult decisions, and in many cases, probably cuts to afford to pay the athletes. I think again that all kind of comes in to consideration here, and I don't know that anyone has really kind of cracked the code on how this is all going to work, but I do think we're trending towards rev sharing is being a part of college athletics at some point, and whether that's the NCAA's litigation kind of running into a Supreme Court that ultimately makes that decision for them, whether it's conferences creating their own new division and they handle it themselves, or whatever, it's probably going to end up happening in our lifetime and probably not too distant future.
Yeah, I think this is a really complex issue, and I think the employee actually is a bigger complexity actually than this, because we've seen revenue share models work a long time. And P.S., like, revenue sharing's already working in this model. Universities are taking in millions of dollars that are, by the way, the entire university educational system benefits. Yes, they earmark funds for the athletic department, which is a big value driver. They're bringing in revenue, but that revenue is often dispersed across the science department, the law department. Like, do not think that these universities do not benefit, which is one of the investments they're making in a Nick Saban, in a coach that's bringing a lot of revenue stream to the market. Because I could tell you, looking at the University of Alabama, talk to someone on their internal campus about their success on the football field and the correlation to student applications, amount of money into each of those educational departments that now have new budgets because of this. Like, don't sell that, hey, this is just going to one athletic department, because that is not the case. So I do think there's some real complexities here for sure. It's going to be interesting. I do think there's revenue models that are out there that are interesting that will play. But I want to move, because we don't have much time more with you. So I want to move with the Razorbacks get the NIL Collective booth, the launch of Arkansas Edge. And of course, the Arkansas Edge is powered by BasePath. Talk to us, Thomas. What do we think?
Yeah, no, really excited to see this. So Blueprint Sports are, the ones that are really stepping in to kind of consolidate the NIL world for Arkansas student athletes. And obviously we help to kind of power their collective. So yeah, super excited to see this one. I know a lot of the folks on the campus there, and this has been something that's been in the works for, many, many months. And so really excited to see it kind of come together. And I think it's going to be, a great way to help kind of bring the focus of NIL at Arkansas to drive more value for both the community and the student athletes that this collective is there to serve.
Rob, I really love the fact, like, in this thing, they call a couple of really good groups together with Blueprint Sports and BasePath, aligning themselves with high quality companies. Smart. Now, here's another NIL for good. I see, like, in the agreement, each athlete coming alongside and promoting the United Way of Northern Arkansas for the Arkansas 211 Day. I mean, this is just cool stuff that I think so much of the public are missing, because they think it's all pay to play and NIL. There's a lot of money going to a lot of good as part of this thing. And I just don't think that should get overlooked.
Yeah, that definitely needs to be highlighted. And that's what we like to do on each one of these. So let's, why don't we let's get some quick Thomas tips, maybe ask some questions. I know we've talked about a little bit off air. Let's dig in.
All right, Thomas. Yeah, what I would like to talk about, Thomas, is probably, well, you can do Thomas tips. You can talk about whatever you want, man. I don't need it, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about how, because the NIL collectives have talked and come alongside BasePath, the impact of that ripple and the value that all these organizations are getting.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. I'll also just quickly touching on the last point you made. Yeah, the Blueprint guys do incredible work, really bringing the community into a lot of these collectives, and they have collectives obviously all across the country. They just announced the ones at Kansas and Penn State and Maryland. They have a really intentional focus on doing good for not just the athletes, but also the communities that they're a part of. And then a lot of that comes in charitable work for the state and region that they're a part of. Yeah, as far as what we do to help to support kind of our collectives and their missions, it largely comes back to the focus of how do we make the lives for the student athletes as meaningful and impactful as possible. So whether that's providing them new opportunities, whether that's helping educate them on how to improve their marketability, their financial acumen, their networking and life skills, those are all things that we're really proud to be able to take part in. And then obviously helping to ease the administrative burden for the folks that are having to really kind of live in this world day to day.
Love it.
Thomas, are there, I've seen different schools have multiple collectives. Is that something that's kind of changing and consolidating like we saw this thing with Arkansas?
Yeah, I think you're starting to see a consolidation, trend. It's been going on for probably around 6-8 months now. I think when NIL kind of started, and particularly when collectives kind of came to be, you had folks that were, hey, I just want to help and I want to do something. And, a lot of these guys who are starting these collectives and are entrepreneurs or business folks in their own right. And so their direction is to act. And so they took action, they did something, they built something. And I think as they've started to learn a little bit more about the industry, there is benefit in just kind of joining forces and consolidating kind of the base in many ways to help obviously the athletes to have some simplicity so they're not having to go to 4 different places to kind of manage their NIL lives, but also for the fans in the community to get behind the NIL efforts of that campus. We had some campuses where you had 3 or 4 different collectives, and fans are like, okay, well, who do I actually give to support? So I think this kind of trend of consolidation is one that is, continuing to drive more and more value, not only for the athletes, but also for the fans and the communities that they're a part of.
Last tip, wallet for the student athlete. These kids got a lot going on. What's the number one benefit from having that wallet available right on their app?
Yeah, I would say it allows you to see your entire NIL life in one place and to disclose everything that you have going on, with the push of a thumb. So that is something that the NCAA has already kind of said that will be going into their bylaws probably in January, at latest in June, July. You will have to disclose all of your NIL activities within 30 days. And so having a place where you can kind of view that entire world in one simple automated way, I think is something that's going to be really helpful to a lot of the athletes out there. Awesome.
Thomas Jr., BasePath, thank you so much for joining us. Rob, take it away.
Can't thank you enough.
Yeah, Thomas, this has been great. And, each week we look to have, just bring meaningful guests on like Thomas and just sharing. I think the big takeaway for me is just on the education side, like Trent's been focusing on, and with Trent's tips and everything else. But just there's a lot of great things with NIL, and each week I think we have the just opportunity to hear from different people and different stories and understand. So make sure that you're reaching out and listening and watching us on NIL4U. Thanks, everybody. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.